Hey everybody, this is Dan with Pain Free You. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Amy from Toronto, Canada, and she was gracious enough to volunteer to share her story. So, Amy, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.
Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of a story? We'll call this story time.
Okay, I'll try. I'm not the best storyteller, but I was
That's
telling
okay.
you notes. I wanted to come on and talk about my migraine pain. And I've had it for about 10 years, but I call myself migraine free for about 5 years now. So, yay. I'll tell the story about how it started. So I had a baby and I was breastfeeding, and around 2014, somewhere I stopped breastfeeding. And that's when I had my first migraine. So sometime quick after that. And I say that right away, and I noticed there's a correlation, right? Like, why did I say, oh, I stopped breastfeeding and I had a migraine? So, what happened right away is that I started self-diagnosing and thinking, oh, where did this come from?
Sure.
I'd never had a migraine. I had a really close friend who suffered terribly from migraines for years. So I was obviously pretty scared about what a migraine was, because for me, and I think for any migraine sufferer who's watching, they know it's like you're done for the day, like you're not functioning. And the pain is so significant that, depending on the time, um, I remember at times just thinking like, I need to go to the hospital. Like, this is crazy. So, yeah, I was pretty scared. And so I started thinking about, okay, maybe this isn't a big deal. I just finished breastfeeding. Like, I'm going through a lot of hormonal changes. Maybe things will be okay. And I also noticed, again, because I was getting vigilant and watching symptoms, it was only happening about once a month, close to my menstruation cycle, which was all over the place at the time. Again, I was like, okay, this makes sense. I've like going through all these woman changes. So I started going to acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And I'm not a fully holistic person, but I believe like you got to come at things from lots of different angles. So I was doing that, and it did help with my menstruation cycles and sort of regulating all that. So that was a big success, but it made no impact on my migraine. So I still was getting about one a month. And the symptoms of the migraine were that you're done for the day, right?
Mhm.
So that's, I think, when I started to get more nervous, that nothing that I was doing was actually helping the migraines. And I can't remember exactly how far into that I was, maybe a couple of years. And then they started to increase in frequency. So I started to get them twice, 3 times a month. When I started increasing to 2 times a month, I was like, oh, okay. The second one is around maybe my ovulation time. So I kept, I sort of built these theories.
Right.
And then as soon as the theory started to get broken, it was like the panic sets in a little bit more, and the narrative starts to change. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe it's because of this, or maybe it's because of that. So I know everybody who's watching is extremely familiar with what starts to happen internally. And of course, it was subtle at the time. I didn't know anything about perceived danger pain at this time. So I was just staying vigilant, trying to attack symptoms. At this time, of course, I started doing other things. I went to a chiropractor, I went to an osteopath, all these things to help try, because, migraine pain is here, but it's also here. So I
Mm.
just started to try and
Right.
figure out different ways to approach it, but it was all just through symptoms and taking care of the symptoms. And then sadly, it started to be more random. So it wasn't just the migraines didn't just happen during ovulation time. So then I started thinking, oh, I think it's because it was raining yesterday. Oh, I had a glass of red wine. I had some chocolate. So that was, again, sort of during this period, about 5 to 6 years, sort of after my first migraine.
Yeah.
Um, I did go to the doctor, and I got medication. So the triptans for anybody who are migraine sufferers, and they worked amazing. So the great thing about that was I had this like power pill in my back pocket at all times. And if I was at work and I started experiencing a migraine, I could take one and like feel safe that, within about a half an hour, I'd be okay and I could continue working.
Right.
So that was a game changer for me. And I kept thinking, okay, I can do this. This is all right. It's not the end of the world. People have worse things.
Right.
Um, so that the problem with the medicine was that I had to keep changing medications. So I don't know if you've heard that before, but they lose their effectiveness. At least for me, that was my experience. So I changed medications about 3 times through the course of that 5 to 6 years. And I think that also increased my fear. I know right towards the end, and all, you
Yeah.
know,
What if I run out of meds to try? Right.
yes. And for the intention of like telling a story, I was at my mom's once and she lives north of the city. And I'm at my mom's, like trying to enjoy, have a good time. And I get a migraine and realize I don't have my medication. So I'm in bed. My mom had never really seen me with a migraine and, can't move, can't do anything. And she feels terrible. So she's calling every pharmacist she knows, every doctor, or whatever, to try and get me some emergency meds. And she did. She went and drove out, got me some emergency meds, and then I was able to recover. But also around this time, my migraines sometimes were several days in a row. So I ended up leaving and going home because I was like, what if I have another one tomorrow? I need to get close to my medication. So just painting that story that I was functioning. I know a lot of people with migraines, it can get worse and worse and worse. I was functioning, but people at work knew that I might have to leave because of my migraines.
Right.
Um, I definitely had lots of plans ruined, lots of um, 24 hours in bed, 48 hours in bed. I had a small child, just um, these things that people who suffer with migraines, people who suffer with pain know that it just interrupts your life.
Mhm.
And then, and then just the whole global kind of picture of like, oh no, what if this is me for the rest of my life? Like, what if it keeps getting worse? What if the medicine doesn't work one day? What
Right.
if like more symptoms come, right? Because at this point it was, or I had decided it was wine, it was hormones, it was, um, so, um, I started noticing that, where I was going next to try and figure out other ways to treat it were like elimination diets and I don't know. I didn't know what else to do to lower stress. I actually am certified to teach a type of mindfulness, and I meditate. So I was like, what the hell more can I do? So it was at that time that I just got to this point where it was like a breaking point, and I said, no more.
Right.
This is not an option. I am not going to do this anymore. And there was just something deep inside me that said no. And that was when sort of the switch happened. I don't know if you relate to that. Um, but I was like, no, I'm not going to keep taking care of my symptoms. Like this,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a spiritual belief or something, but I said, if I can create this, like clearly my body has created this, then I can uncreate it. I
Sure.
didn't know how and I didn't know why, but it was just this like very, stubborn thing that came up inside me. And who knows why, but I saw an ad for Curable, and I
Okay.
know probably a lot of your audience members have heard of Curable before.
Sure.
It's an app. Of course, I was skeptical. I downloaded it.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't pay for it. A skeptical person was just like, okay, let me see what's going on here. The first, I think 5, 6 lessons, I can't remember, are free. And it was lesson number 3 that was a clincher for me. So lesson number 3 is one that talks about the science of pain and how it really goes into how pain is reversible. So I think as soon as I heard that, that really matched
Sure.
where I was at. I was like, I have to be able to uncreate this. And it started to explain that the pain system happens in the brain, not in the location of the pain, which is kind of weird with migraines because
Right.
migraines
A little
are,
confusing there. Sure.
yeah, I had to unravel that a little bit. But they have this, anyways, anyone can go and listen to that lesson. But it was really, for me, um, my my brain needed to hear that because it really metaphorically set up the pain system like a newspaper publishing system. So it
Okay.
said that the brain is the publisher. And then there's these like paper delivery people, and then they deliver it to the mailboxes, and then the cells receive the news, and then the cells decide what to do with that information that they received. And they can do a myriad of things, right? So this is what my cells were deciding to do with that information. So then who's the one that delivers the stories to the publisher? It's me.
Mhm.
So I just thought that was so freaking cool. And so I just knew what my job was to do. My job was to retrain that publisher and that whole system and tell a different story.
Right.
So then when you go through the lessons in Curable, like it really just talks about mindfulness. It really talks about, there's some journal writing, like expressing emotions. And I've heard you talk a lot about that. Like you can do that if you want to. But, and I was, as I said, I was already comfortable with mindfulness and mindful breathing. So that's the route I went. And within 3 weeks, I would catch the symptom pretty early on. And I would, just remind myself that this is a story, and the fake news is going to get sent out. So I would just go into the breath. I have an image of me like walking home from work because I tended to start to feel the symptoms like in the back of my neck as I was walking home from work. And I would just like stop and just take my breath, which is, I love how you always start your videos. And I would just say, I'm just walking on the sidewalk. I'm just walking home from work. I'm right here, right now. There's no emergency, no alarm, no need for any alarms. And I would just like keep going. So within 3 weeks, I realized that I had symptoms like lots of little moments like that, but never a migraine. So I was pretty
Cool.
excited.
Of course. You're like, wait a minute, I can influence this.
I know it was so cool. And I wanted to like scream it for the rafters and tell everybody, but also I was, still a little bit skeptical, staying humble. So I also, there's still fear. I had spent 5 or 6 years in that vigilant state. So I was listening to a lot of success stories. So which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because I needed sort of like my diet of like reminding myself,
Oh, yeah.
thanks, yeah, listening to lesson 3, um, and not being too, I don't know. I don't know, maybe not too optimistic. I don't know. I wanted to be realistic. I wanted to see the evidence, and the evidence was important. But at the end of the day, I realized I was the one doing the work. Um, and that was pretty powerful. So that's all I could really rely on at the end of the day. Um, I did have relapse, and luckily Curable had like a lesson about that. But that was hard, right? Because you get a little, or I got a little bit inflated. Yeah. And then I was like, all right, I'm screwed. Back to like, I'm never gonna recover. Like, I'm not the recovered person. Like, da 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 da.
Yeah.
So that was probably like 3 months in. And so for anybody watching, I just really empathize with what that feels like. And I just really hope for all of you that um, you go back to square one. If it means going back to square one, you go back to another step along the way. Um, I did like something from, I hadn't found you at the time yet, Dan. I also read Alan Gordon's book, The Way Out, and I did really enjoy and resonate with the fact that he said he looked at pain on like a scale of 1 to 10. And he said, like, if you're at a 6 or over, like just do the things. Like he was a back pain sufferer. So he was like, I would get my pillow and to sit on. I would, you know, do this or do that. And so he said, if you're 6 and under, do some of the other things. Like he had more of a bit of a mindfulness approach and like a body scan type approach. Um, because again, he was very much of the understanding that we're retraining the brain. So if you're 6 and under, do your retraining work. If you're a 6 and over,
Make
Do
yourself comfortable.
make yourself comfortable, baby yourself, do the things. And I think that was a big relief to me. I've heard that people who have PDP are perfectionists, and I would have never, ever called myself that. Um, However, I saw myself and the way I was trying to attack these symptoms, and the vigilance is very much a perfectionist, watching everything and really judging myself harshly. So I get that. So I really appreciated that, that scale to sort of help me say, whatever, I'm like above a 6, so I'm going to take my medicine. So I'm going to, like, I don't know, not drink red wine or whatever. Not that I drink a lot of red wine, but I'm just saying, I would just start to allow that. So then at about 7 months, I let myself really celebrate. I was like, I'm not a migraine sufferer. I don't have migraines. I have head pain. And sometimes I have to treat my head pain. And incurable, they use the word bananas sometime to just like, pain is pain. And to this day, I still have symptoms. One thing that happened, which might be helpful for people to hear if it has happened to them or if it does happen to them somewhere down the line, is that my pain symptoms decided to be something else after sort of I had decided I'm not a migraine sufferer anymore. So then I became a back pain sufferer. But I think because I had these tools, I was like, um,
Yeah.
they're yeah, it was still scary. I still went through the fear. And I've heard you say this too, like I think I was constantly trying to escape the cycle and become perfectly free of the cycle that happens to human beings, which
Forever.
begins with
Yeah.
ever, forever, forever, never have to experience that
Luck with
again.
that. Good luck with that.
Thank you. And here we are as humans. And I think that's the thing. When I found you, and didn't find you until very recently, like in the last year, I think that's more the approach where the comment that I initially made on one of your videos was more like, this is a way of life that has really impacted the way I live. And I think it's a beautiful metaphor for how to live day to day.
Mhm.
Because now I can sometimes look at everything as a symptom or a trigger, right? And apply some of the practices of just breathing and not feeding the fake news to the publisher.
Right.
And so I think if I had to like boil it down to a few main takeaways, if that's helpful for anybody,
Sure.
my main one was that I chose a new belief that matched how I saw my best self, which was not going to happen. Like I'm not living a life of vigilance and watching symptoms. That was my choice,
Mhm.
and I believed that was possible. And then the second was to relax around the triggers and the symptoms. And I know I've learned that that's a lifelong journey. So those were my two sort of takeaways. This is why I've really loved your work so much, and I resonate deeply with your calling it perceived danger pain. That is the perfect name for it, in my opinion. And and I feel very lucky to know that because not a lot of people do, and more people will because of you and because of sharing it. And one day this will just become normal for us to relate to our bodies that way. And just lastly, I really realized that we're not separate from our bodies. I think I really did feel that way, that the body was something separate from me that, might like take over or be in control, and we're not. And I would encourage people, just another sideline, to do other things that are reminders that we are not separate from our bodies. So one thing that I started doing was cold plunging. And I know that's pretty popular these days.
Right.
And I find it really cool that when you get into the water, you're always scared, because the symptom of getting into that water is being freezing cold, right? And why would you even want to do that? I don't know. So
Until you're 10 minutes afterwards and you're like buzzing. It's like, wow,
yeah, Thank
I
you.
had an opportunity to do that on a trip once where I was able to get into a cold tank like 4 or 5 days in a row. And you're right, it was incredibly challenging. You get in there and like in the first 10 seconds, you're like, what the heck am I doing in here?
Mhm.
But, I got it up to, I think, sat as long as 5 minutes, by the
Yes.
end of the week. And it's like, and then you get out and you got to like restore movement to get the warmer blood from your torso into your limbs, but don't do it too fast and like,
Yeah.
slow movements. And um, I'm not convinced by itself cold plunging is a cure for TMS. I don't
No,
think so.
neither.
I think it is a very interesting practice.
Mhm.
I don't know enough about it, but um, I think part of it is to say I can do hard things. I can do difficult things,
Agreed.
right? So I don't want this to get into a cold plunge conversation, but
No,
that's
no, thank
cool.
you. Yeah.
Um,
That's great. Even
couple,
mindfulness, like none of these things, and I've heard you say this, which is why I resonate so deeply with your work. None of these things are the answer. That's not what this is about. So I really appreciate your daily messages of that over and over again, that you
the
do the
thing,
work.
yeah, the thing that I believe happened for you was this shift of perception that said, I'm not going to be this broken person.
Mhm.
You made a decision to go, mm-mm, no more, right? And I hit that same thing. I kind of call it beating my head against the wall one last time, just saying I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of living my life as if I'm the back pain guy and it affects all aspects of my life. And you kind of hit that same wall where you just said, I'm not playing this game. I'm not going to participate in this mentality that says I'm busted, I'm broken. And it's hard because you go in and out of that mindset, you go in and out of the fear.
Yeah,
Um, So you came to some really nice realizations, and I'm thrilled. Curable was that trick for you just to say, it's a news story, or it is a story, and it is based on the perception that holy shit, I'm in trouble, I'm in danger. Um, and so it's not about the tools. It's not about mindfulness meditation or breath work or somatic tracking or journaling or you name it. It's about the core belief holy crap, I'm really not broken. And the fear has captured me, and it captured you for a lot of years, right? I liked what you said towards the end when you were talking about how I do still sometimes have symptoms, and your symptoms have uh, relocated. They went from the penthouse suite to the, ground floor, whatever. Um, so many people want to get pain-free and never experience it ever again. And that is setting yourself up for a big disappointment and freak out if you get another symptom somewhere else or the old symptom comes back. Because the belief that once I got this licked, I'll never have to deal with it again is a myth. I don't think it
mhm,
exists. Your brain's primary job is safety and survival. And if the brain perceives danger, it's going to use symptoms as a warning to go, hey, something bad's going on, right? And a hypervigilant brain, which many of us have, is always on the lookout. So you did an exceptionally good job of teaching your brain that I don't get migraines anymore. If I have a little head pain, it's not a big deal, but it never goes big. And you were very convincing and compelling, and your brain says, okay, got it, check.
yeah.
But let's
And
be
with
hyper vigilant. And now I'm feeling some sensations in the back, and maybe there's some work stress, and you're a little tense, and the brain goes, whoa, here's some pain. But your ability to say, I know what that is.
yeah.
And you made that motion. You were like, I know what that is, and you
Yeah,
didn't fall into the fear.
yeah. I'm also a teacher and a mother, and I think I use that to understand that there's a level of certainty that you need to have when you're making a decision to mold someone or something. Like, I'm sorry if that sounds terrible to think about teaching your children like that, but my children or my students need to know that they're safe, and I have set these sort of like parameters for them that I've chosen, right? And sometimes that's hard when you're a parent or a teacher to decide like, oh, are these the right parameters to set? Like, I hope I'm not overdoing it or underdoing it. And that's sort of the way I see my job with my brain as well. Like, I have to be the boss. If I'm not the boss, and it is, and it's getting signals from me that I'm unconscious of, then that's not going to go well for any of us.
Right.
So, yeah. So, again, watching your daily reminders and just kind of like reminding myself what my job is really soothing to me and just keeps me going. And I still get symptoms. It's just par for the course. And just like I still have a child that acts up sometimes, I'm still a parent. My job isn't done.
Right.
Mhm.
So the symptoms you get now are mostly back related?
The back pains never flared up to the extent that when I was in my early 20s, I had debilitating back pain for a while. And I don't know if that's part of the story. I decided not to go there, um, but I got through that. Maybe it switched to the migraines, I'm not sure. But now when I get like a tiny flare up in the back, it's never debilitating. So it doesn't take me to that place. When I get a symptom related to a migraine, again, I call it head pain now, that can still mess with me, right? And so
Right.
I do have to sort of stay, in charge, the one in charge. And don't get me wrong, I still carry around medication if I need it. But that's my like six and over thing, which doesn't happen often at all. I can't remember the last time I had to leave work for a migraine. Like that hasn't happened in years and years. So um, I think that's the bottom line, right? Like I'm healthy, I'm in control. I found the belief that works for me.
Yeah. So for anybody watching who's sitting here going, she's no success. She still has symptoms. What is she doing here telling us she's a success? Um, don't go there. That's not true. The success is when you know what's going on and you don't allow fear to own you while you're symptomatic. Success is not being pain-free forever, because if that's the case, I'm not a success either. And I'm the guy teaching this stuff, right? Mom had a stroke 18 months ago. I had back pain for about 10 days. I'm a human. My brain said, holy crap, we got a lot of bad stuff going on. And it turned it on. I'm a success because it never became chronic or persistent. And you're a success for the same reason, that you know what it is, you know how to handle it, and it doesn't become persistent and repeating, and it's not stealing days away from you a month, and you're not having to leave work, and you're not consumed by fear. This is not a job of recovering from symptoms so they never ever appear again. This is a job of recovering from fear and knowing that I'm actually okay. And this is part, as you said earlier, this is part of the human system. The brain's job is to keep us safe and alive. And if it notices there's some danger, it's going to turn on a symptom to warn us. Simply put, something cool's not going on. We don't have to interpret it as meaning something deeper than that. A lot of people are trying to say, well, what does my pain mean? And why do I have headaches? Why did I have back pain and you have headaches? And do we have to figure out the meaning behind it? Oh, the meaning is that the brain's perceiving some danger. And as you found out, once it started happening, you fell down into that cycle of fear, and then it became its own thing. And the fear of the symptoms was probably more involved than, you know, who knows, maybe the emotional distress of disconnecting from your child by no longer breastfeeding. Who knows? We could
Yeah.
analyze and talk about all of the possible meanings behind the start of your, is it hormones? Was it emotional? Is it, who knows?
And to that point, if you don't mind me jumping in there, I feel like you've talked about this too, which is important for me that with some of the other work that's out there through um, in the
Right.
same line of work, you can go deep into the emotional reasons for things. And I just also decided not to do that. Um, I didn't think that by cleaning up every stress that I had in my life or every emotional response I had to things in my life, I didn't think that was fair to me. Again, I'm a human. Like, I'm gonna have lots of big emotions or stressful times in my life. I don't know. I don't know, necessarily think that's what those modalities were trying to get me to do. They were just trying to help me like not be scared of my emotions. But I really was careful not to go down that road as to, what past traumas was this from or what. I really tried hard not to
And
do
the
that.
reason I don't teach let's go dig up our past is because I tried that and it wasn't my solution. I
Mhm.
had pain for years after I dug up every possible past trauma. Um, and so it wasn't part of my solution. So why would I teach it now as a solution, right? Or do people get better from journaling and from, all that emotional work? Yeah, sometimes, but it's clearly not mandatory, just like meditation. No knock on meditation.
Oh,
I was using meditation to get better. And every time I'd finish, I'd say, "Did it work?" No, it didn't. Darn it, I'm doing it wrong.
yeah.
And breath work, same thing. It didn't work. I'm doing it wrong. I was doing it for an outcome as opposed to doing it because it feels good. And
I
so,
remember.
yeah. And one of our other success stories, Phil, he said, I didn't do meditation because I was trying to get better. I did it because it felt good to start my day with 30 minutes of peace and calm and Zen. And, he used visualization. He could see himself becoming more and more well each day. He could make believe in his head. He could watch a movie of himself recovering and getting better. Um, for anybody who's like, I'm not good at visualization. Yes, you are. You're visualizing every single day, every single time you think about a minute from now, an hour from now, a week from now, a month, a year. We're visualizing. That's what we do. We're picturing the future. Problem is, so many people with these syndromes and these pains or symptoms visualize a bad future.
Mhm. Yeah.
They're predicting the worst. And that's a negative visualization that oftentimes leads to more of the same. So I try not to overcomplicate it. I try to keep it simple. Perceived danger is a problem. How can we create safety? There's an infinite number of ways to do that.
Infinite. And everybody, please find your own way, be your own experimenter, and then trust that when you find something, that's not even the reason. Because the modalities that you try will shift and change along the way too. But the reason is what Dan's saying. It's because you've made a decision, you've stayed in control, and
Yeah.
you've decided you're the one in control. And my favorite modalities for doing that for me change and shift along the way. But I do have to keep reasserting that part of myself.
Yeah, control's an interesting word.
Yeah.
When you say control, you're not controlling symptoms, you're controlling your response and your mindset towards the symptoms. And so I think that's an important distinction because a lot of people are like, Dan, this doesn't work. I can't control my symptoms. And I'm like, no, you're not supposed to be able to. Symptoms are controlled by the unconscious, subconscious mind. We can't directly control that, but through the conscious mind and making the decision that says, I'm running the show, we can influence the subconscious to turn off these
Yeah.
symptoms.
You
And
said decision, which is probably a better word, and it's choices that you kind of have to make in every moment. Like it's so great when you get to that place where you don't feel like you're making a choice in every moment, but there are times where you're more conscious of the choices that you're making. And I think for people when they first have their first little glimmers of success, or you can even like create a moment of success by noticing what's well in your body too. I know that kind of worked for me in the beginning, so that those first 3 weeks where I had some success, that obviously helped fuel that I have I have this capacity, right? Or this is the way the pain system works, not the way I used to think it was. So again, it's not even me controlling, it's like the way our bodies work. Um,
which is why I spend so much time educating about how does this system work? How does it function? So that when I encourage you to do X, Y, and Z to teach the brain, it's within the framework of how the system works, right? I don't have all these extraneous ideas that have no bearing on how this system works. And so I try to keep it as simple as possible, as accessible as possible, as minimal work as possible. I just talked about recently about, if you're doing this all day, every day, you're just not going to get better because all you're doing all day, every day is confirming your brain's belief that there's something you got to fix. And I'm going to work really hard on it, right? We don't need to work as hard on this as people think. Make a decision. I'm not broken, which is what you finally realize. You're like, holy crap, this is just a pain system that's misinterpreting something. And I always say your brain and nervous system is working flawlessly. It's just operating on misinformation and fear. We correct that misinformation, the fear comes down, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can feel the onset of it, and I can remind myself, no, I'm just walking home from school. There's nothing bad happening. I can not, run home screaming, I got to get home and get my medicine before this flare. No, I'm okay. I'm okay. This is good. I'm just walking home. It's a beautiful day. I see the birds. I hear the birds. Oh, look, a squirrel, right? We can take conscious control of our presence in the day. And if we choose a presence that conveys that I'm actually okay, the brain goes, look at Amy. She's okay. She's not panicking. And that influences the brain to say, oh, I don't really need to escalate. I don't need to turn up the alarm system till it's 10 out of 10 volume, right? And I've recently started thinking about the concept of amplification,
Yeah, I
right?
used to think that too. I used to see like a little dial.
Yeah. And so you talked earlier about the signals coming from the cells, and then the cells in the brain make a decision. Yeah, the brain is controlling all of it. The body does send, nerve signals and sensations and all these things from the body, but it's the brain who's always determining, is this a problem or not? You touch a stovetop and consciously it's off. It's been off for a long time. You can clean it, you can touch it, no problem. you know, you touch the same stovetop and your brain goes, wait, time out. That stove's been on for a while. I can sense the heat coming out of it. You're touching the stovetop. The brain interprets the same touch differently based on the other available information that, hey, we got a hot stove. And what does it do? Ouch, instantly. And then you pull your hand away, you're not burnt. And what happens? The pain's gone. Instantly making a different decision. The hands didn't create the pain. The hands didn't make the pain go away. The brain was running that whole show and it gathers all sorts of information. So I like what you said earlier. It's like the signals go to the cells then in the brain are interpreting, am I in danger or not? And it's up to us to say, no, we're not in danger. The conscious, intelligent part of the brain can say, there's really nothing going on. We're okay.
I think for me at the time, that's such a beautiful um, way that the body works, right? And it's based in science. And now there's more and more available science for us lay people to take in. And for me, that was a way that my brain was going to agree. And it wasn't the only thing, but you can do it, I think, without that as well. But it's so cool when I realized, and I think when people realize, oh, that's great. If this is actually the way the system works, this is fantastic. I can do something here. I don't have to rely on the medication.
Did you have any challenges with believing that you were capable of making different decisions and reframing things to look at it differently? Did you say, like, that first time the migraine came back, like, oh crap, I'm the person who won't get better? Was that a struggle in belief that this is real, but I can't do it? Or was it just a throw the whole thing out because this doesn't work? Like, where was your interpretation? Was it that this stuff doesn't work, or I'm not doing it right?
It was, I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I think one of my own symptoms is that the perfectionist part is that it's all on me. There's something wrong with me. I'm fatally flawed. Other people can do it, but I can't do it. So that's,
Such
in
a
my
big deal.
downward spiral, that's where I go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a big deal. And that's why so much of what I try to do is encourage people to go, look, if one person can get better, you can too. No, but I'm too anxious. I've been in fear my whole life and story, story, story. I'm like, they're a human being, you're a human being. If they can do it, you can do it. If you tell yourself the story that it's not available to me because I'm a special kind of broken, what are you doing? You're pouring more fear on top of the other fear. And if perceived danger is the problem, then creating more fear through your own thinking and beliefs that this won't work for you is definitely not the solution to get out of this. So it is a matter of education, understanding, decision. This applies to me.
Yeah.
And then
That's a,
saying, well, let me stay focused on how can I convey safety credibly, consistently, so that the brain eventually believes it. And you were
and
blessed because you got there pretty quickly. 3 weeks. You had that major,
yeah,
holy
that was,
crap, I'm really okay shift. And that was massive because a lot of people, it takes a long time to get there, partly, and not placing any blame on anybody who's struggling, but partly because they're so attached to their story that they are too anxious. They can't do this. I'm not doing it right. Symptoms are evidence that I'm failing and everything else. And it's just, that's one of the biggest challenges in helping people is to get them out of their own way. And I'm not saying that in any negative, insulting, demeaning way. It's just that it's one of the most common struggles. The people who have the most difficult time are the ones that are so wrapped into the symptoms and the struggle and the prediction that this is going to take forever if it gets better at all. But the people who get better sooner aren't some special kind of wonderful. They just accept
yeah,
what's going on and make a decision that I'm not going to play that fear game because I
yeah,
understand I'm not really broken.
yeah. And the body is very, very real, and symptoms are very, very real. Like all this stuff is happening,
Hmm.
but me, the person that's also part of this body and the system, is has a different role. And I just had to keep reminding myself that I'm still connected to what's happening,
Yeah.
and I'm here. I'm okay. Like, um, I'm not going to go down with the ship, I don't know. It's like you said, it's tricky because um you constant or I have to keep referring to myself. I constantly would go in and out of, I'm not capable, like I'm going to keep messing this up. But for the most part, um I was like, what the hell else is my choice right now?
Right.
And then sometimes when I was really, really like, if I had a relapse, like I said, I would take the medication, but like, let's say the medication didn't work that day or something like that. That didn't happen during a relapse, to be honest, but I would, I
But you
would
had the
go,
fear. You had the fear.
I had the fear, and I would even go to a part of my body that felt well. The thing with migraine pain is it's in a location. It's not often the whole body. Like I could feel nauseous, which could take over the body, but I would focus on my wrist, and I'd be like, this wrist works perfectly. Wow,
Yeah.
that is a thing of beauty. So, there
And
are
I
lots
think
of
that
things.
comes from Alan Gordon. I think he talks about focus on positive or pleasant
Mhm.
sensations.
Maybe that's where I got that from. Yeah.
And I think that's part of his book and his approach. But yeah, it's saying if you're staring at your symptoms and your pains all day long, that's all you see. But notice it's like, well, the rest of my body's fine. Just this one part is a little bit confused.
Yeah.
So I think you're doing amazing.
But
Um, and for anybody who's going to say you're not a success, I say you're wrong. This is success because you're smiling.
I didn't
You're
even
like,
consider that someone was going to come on and say I wasn't a
oh,
success.
I'm preemptively trying to
All
stop that
right.
because some people do. They're like, And those are the people who expect that once you get better, you'll never have a symptom again. And I'm saying it's not realistic.
Yeah, it really isn't. And I'm so glad I'm on that other side of that because I do remember when I was listening to Curable at the beginning, the one of the founders who was the voice of the first few lessons said that herself. And I was just like, well, that sucks. Like that's not what I signed up here for.
Well,
Um, and then I heard lots of success stories from other places over the time, and some people do say like never had a symptom again. So that, but a lot of
rare.
people say
I'll say
that.
that's rare because there
Yeah.
are professionals,
Mhm.
medical doctors who practice medicine in the mind body TMS approach who get symptoms regularly,
Yeah. Yeah.
regularly.
Yeah.
And
And back to the volume, like, but how loud are those symptoms, right? Like
and how
they're
long do they stick around? See, that's why I say I'm a success because I have had 14 years of nothing chronic, meaning nothing longer than, in my case, about 10 days was the longest. That's not a failure.
human.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
a
We
success.
recover from fear. And if you no longer fear the recurrence of symptoms because you know what it is, you know what to do about it, and you move on, symptoms will go away. It won't become persistent. The only reason they become persistent is if a new symptom or an old one coming back freaks you the heck out and you forget everything you knew and you go back to, I'm in trouble.
Mhm.
So the duration and the intensity of a recurrence or a flare-up depends completely on your response to it. And so, brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
So happy that you decided to share your story. Migraines are fairly common, but
Yeah.
also very terrifying to a lot of people.
Yeah. And totally,
Totally curable,
totally curable. Totally.
reversible. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't.
That's my viewpoint on it now.
Yeah, they don't
Definitely.
have to be persistent.
Mhm.
And I've heard even Dr. Schubner, who's one of the medical doctors out there in this TMS mind body space, say that migraines are always TMS. They're always a mind body thing. I mean, obviously, get the MRIs, make sure you don't have anything going on, a tumor or whatever. But migraines are always TMS, which means they're infinitely able to be resolved. We got to
Which is
re
so cool.
we got to recover from the fear. What were we saying?
Which is just so cool. I just find it super cool.
Yeah,
I
you
hope
get done
everybody.
saying that we're connected. Um, I don't even like that term. The mind and body are connected. There's a lot of people in the world talking about that. Oh, the mind and body are connected. No, it's one system. It's one system. You can't even separate them. So, I like the belief and the framing that says the conscious brain is the general manager, the director. And if you're aware of how the system works, the general manager can make better decisions, which influences how the rest of the system operates. Right. And I always say a terrified brain does not operate the human body well.
Yeah.
Because the terrified brain means the general manager's running around screaming, he doesn't know what's going on. And what do you think the rest of the team is going to be doing? I don't know what to do. Ah. So, me and my weird stories and analogies, but it's
No, that's that's the way my brain works as well, which is very much why I continue to follow you. And it's my way of learning. So I think a lot of us, our brains are just narrative, and life happens in metaphors, it seems.
Mhm.
And to your general manager point, any one of us who's ever had a job, if we've had um, a leader who we've really been inspired to work for and has had a positive impact on the system, the company. They've been somebody who's strong, but not mean, not overbearing, not micromanaging, sees the best in us and gets the best out of us. So when I think of the general manager that we all are, that those are the choices we have to keep making for our system, right?
Firm but fair, accurate knowledge. We know how the system works, so we're going to work within the framework of how this system works. And, fear is never a good thing, whether you're operating a corporate company or your own human body. False evidence appearing real.
Yep.
We don't need to buy into the fear because
And if
fear,
we see it, how do we deal with it, right? Like, because we both said fear is natural. It happens. Every leader still feels fear.
Mhm.
Every Olympian out there right now is still going to experience fear.
Yeah, the key is that you use the accurate knowledge to neutralize that fear, to say, no, I've done my homework, I've studied it, I understand how this system called the human body and brain works, and I know how the pain system works. And if I'm experiencing pain, the only conclusion I can come to is that my brain is perceiving danger. Now, if I was just in a car accident or fell down the steps, pain has a different meaning. Holy crap, I just fell down the steps. That's a different thing. But, if you wake up and your back is sore, the brain's perceiving some danger. And we don't have to necessarily panic about that. We evaluate and go, oh, no, nothing dangerous going on here, brain. Shh, cut it out. We're good, right? We don't need to roll into panic every time we get a bodily sensation. And a lot of people do. I mean, they could feel a twinge in their pinky, and next thing they know, they're at the emergency room getting an x-ray. It's been going on for an hour. Why are you panicking? So, and I'm not judging at all. So if anybody does that and is very health anxious, this is not judgment. It's just um, reflecting how over the top many people get because fear is running the show, as opposed to the conscious thinking, wise brain that's learned how the system works. So, anything else you'd like to share? Words of wisdom?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I really enjoy your videos, and I'm sure people out there in the community feel the exact same way. So yeah, I hope this can help add to the great work that you've been putting out every day.
Awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. Amy, thank you so much. Stay on the path because you've got this dialed in. You've got it figured out. Symptoms only mean that the brain's temporarily perceiving some danger, and the way you're responding is perfect. And that's why you've got nothing chronic or severe going on. So, very happy for you, very proud of you. Love that you shared your story. You're going to help a lot of people. And if I can ever do anything for you, by all means, reach out.
Thank you,
Right.
Dan.
Thank you so much. Say goodbye.